All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I really don't want to miss things, so I'm going to be looking down at my promise. I'm here with you. So first off, welcome to Pitch Night. We are so happy to be here finally in this new space with Sasaki. So thank you all for being here. My name is Jennifer Lawrence, and I'm the executive director of the foundation. And I'm really honored that you all would spend an evening with us. First, we would like to start by acknowledging the land on which we are meeting this evening. This land is the territory of the Massachusetts, Tucket, and their neighbors, the Wampanoag and Nipmuc peoples, who have stewarded this land for hundreds of generations. We recognize the repeated violations of sovereignty, territory, and water perpetrated by invaders that have impacted the original inhabitants. We extend our respect to citizens of these nations who live here and their ancestors who have lived here for over 500 generations, and to all Indigenous people. We also affirm that this acknowledgement, it does not undo the harm that has been done and continues to be perpetrated now against people, their lands. I'd also like to take a minute to thank our Sasaki Foundation and board for being here tonight. So thank you. And of course, an incredible thank you to this panel of jurors who are here this evening. The thoughtfulness and the meaningful time that you have put in, incredible. So thank you. We really appreciate it. And we could not do this without you. So thank you. Now, what I really need my notes for, the logistics. So a few housekeeping details for you all to keep in mind. Please note that we are recording this event and we're going to be sharing it later on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube at Sasaki FBN. The camera will be focused up here, so don't worry, it will not pan back there. Please take a moment to silence your phones so that we do not distract our presenters. They have a really quick amount of time up here, so we want to give them all of the spotlight. But keep the phones with you because you'll be able to vote later for your. All of our presenters are at the table over here along my right. So please stay out of their way. We have a really tight ship tonight and we don't want them to have to trip over anybody up here. There's plenty of food and drink. As you can see, please eat it. At the end of the night, we do not want to have to figure out places to put it. So eat the food. That is a very informal come and go. So please. The restrooms are accessible past the elevators where you just came in, right around the corner. If you need to make a phone call, we ask that you also go back to the elevators so that we don't just happening in the room. And without further ado, I want to introduce the board chair of the Sasaki Foundation, Marianne Ocampo.
Thank you, Jen. And hey, everybody, it's great to see you. I am so excited. This is one of the major events that we love to do for the foundation because we get to meet such incredible people who are activists and advocates for their communities. And we're just lucky to have you here tonight with us. The Sasaki Foundation has accomplished a lot in the past year since our last pitch night last May, I believe. We continue to celebrate all of the impressive people that have been part of our design grants, which you saw earlier. If you saw some of the kind of design cohort that was flashing up at the beginning of this event. And so we're very happy to have this new cohort coming in with us tonight as well. After conducting 2 years of virtual online kind of programming where we were having community discussions about really amazing topics, we are excited to be relaunched in person and in hybrid at 110 Chauncey being our new downtown home location. For being part of this community and part of the downtown community, we're just very excited to really continue the important conversations on equity and resilience. We're also expanding our SEED program. That's our summer exploratory experience and design internship. Meredith does a lot of that great work with our youth, working with local high school students that are having paid internships, where last year we had 11 students, and this year we've grown to having more than 40 students that will be joining us this summer, 4 times what we usually have. 4 times, that's amazing, right? That's amazing. 7 teaching assistants, and then also a studio manager that will be helping with the youth and really exploring design as a career as they're thinking about their. So we're very, very excited about that. We're thrilled with this new season and our new home here in downtown, growing our impact in communities throughout Greater Boston. So this evening, we are thrilled to have with us tonight. We have our 5th call for proposals for our design grants. We have 8 teams here with the creative pitches. We've been talking to them. They're very excited and nervous maybe to share some of those. But we're here in celebration of you all. So hopefully it will be it's a party. We in this year have talked about our theme and the way that we were going to frame this year's design cohort. And for us, it was very important to have a theme, in this case called Shared Voices, Charting a Course for Community Action. So that when we're addressing issues of environmental resilience, displacement, affordable housing, ways that we're thinking about mobility choices and meaningful public engagement, that all these considerations in planning and design that are so broad and complex, they require for us what we thought about as a shared approach to facilitate all the necessary conversations and deliver actionable solutions that can be implemented with community members. Most of these challenges faced by Boston communities are really not limited to local neighborhoods. There's major effects that are felt and shared across the Commonwealth and beyond. And with that, we know there are multiple futures at stake, and we can make a difference by acting now in projects that we're about to hear tonight. The Sasaki Foundation recognizes the need for interdisciplinary collaboration, that we need diverse voices at the table, and regional cooperation as key drivers to thinking about shared solution and creating shared impact. The Hideo Sasaki Foundation, I just want to say, was started in 2000 in honor of Hideo Sasaki. Hideo Sasaki was a Japanese American designer who was a pioneer really of interdisciplinary design and practice really in the 1950s. He was a leading landscape architect. He was a practitioner. He was an academic. And so we're here honoring his legacy really today. I want to pay tribute to the generations of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders as we've just concluded this Heritage Month, who have enriched our Greater Boston communities with their contributions and influences. The spirit of Hideo's legacy lives in our foundation's work today and all the great contributions that we're going to hear about tonight. We believe that design really does have the power to address urgent challenges of our generation, from equity issues to ways that we're thinking about environmental resilience with that creative thinking. Design is an agent of change, and yet access to design and resources for design are really limited for a lot of communities. And therein lies the work of our foundation. Our work is only possible through the support of all the great colleagues that we have with the firm, the foundation. I think James and all the principals that are here today and all of the volunteers from the staff at Sasaki that support us. We can't do it without you. And before I turn things over to Elaine, I just want to take a moment to also acknowledge individuals who are my colleagues of the Sasaki Foundation Board of Trustees, including John Sinkala, who I believe is back here and can sit up here. Thank you. We have Meredith McCarthy. I'm going to raise your hand. Julia Carlton McKay. Where is she? Oh, good. He's back there. Chris Garzi, Danison Tavares, Tao Zhang, Ben Zunkler is in the back there, helping people come up to the second floor. Timothy Gale, who's going to be serving as a jury chair this year. And then, of course, Elaine Limmer. Thank you.
Marianne. Hey everybody, so I'm Elaine Limmer. I'm part of the board. Super fun for me to serve as the jury chair for design grants this year. I'm gonna be the MC for tonight to keep us moving because we have lots of great ideas to hear from. I want to say first a big thank you to all of the teams for all of your fascinating ideas. It really makes our version of jury duty very fun. And thank you so much to this jury who put a lot of time and effort into reviewing the 19 applications we received to narrow down to the 8. Just to introduce everyone, maybe you want to just give a wave. Timothy Gale, who's with Sasaki and the Sasaki Foundation Board, Wendell Joseph of Tool Design Group, Ken Lowe of Tufts University, Lily Song of Northeastern University, and Dominic Tribone of Lyft. So we have a very strict rule so that we can make sure we really give each of the teams full amount of time. We have this very scary time here hiding behind the pole, Don, who's the treasurer for the board. So each team will have 5 minutes to present, and then we'll have 5 minutes of Q&A. And then please do stay till the end because we'll have a chance to vote for a fan favorite. So with that, I'll welcome up the first team, 1975, I think.
Yes, be kind to us. Hello, everyone. Chào mọi người. Happy Pride Month, by the way. So this is our project, 1975, a healing memorial project in Dorchester, Boston, the Vietnamese diaspora. My name is Linh Vu. You can call me Linh. I am a mental health clinician specializing in Vietnamese American individuals and families. I am a community program manager for Boston Little Saigon Culture District, recently recognized in Phil's Corner of Dorchester. I'm also a PhD student at UMass Boston, critical refugee studies, as well as Vietnamese American studies. This is my teammate.
I'm Ngọc Tran Vu. I go by Tran. I'm an artist and a cultural organizer. And I wanted to emphasize that our project is an community-led, artist-led project that's very much a long time coming, and we're excited. My background, we both are local. We grew up in the community. I've been practicing art for over 15 years, really rooted in socially engaged art that is rooted in collaboration. Here's a project I did in 2017-18 where we utilized community organizing strategy to go door knocking, really making it really truly accessible, multilingual, and intergenerational, so that community feedback and engagement is truly at the heart of the project. So we're really proud of that, and that continues to be the ongoing kind of themes of a lot of my work throughout, and that's the heart of what our project carries to. So this is another project I did as an homage for the 39 lives that were lost in 2019, emphasizing on the idea of loss.
So 2025 marks the 50th anniversary of the Fall of Saigon, or the end of the war in Vietnam. Huge year. We want to create this memorial in collaboration with our very Vietnamese American community in Dorchester to foster remembrance and healing within the Vietnamese diaspora and beyond. Now, this project is going to be a physical contrast to the dominant narratives and monuments existing up and about the war in Vietnam. So in contrast to the one that you see, something like that you see in the background picture here in this slide. So these monuments are usually told through like militaristic lens and very non-Vietnamese lens.
So the writer and professor Viet Thanh Nguyen talks about how all wars are fought twice. First time in the battlefield, the second time in memory. And we also want to add the third time also in legacy and intergenerationally. And that's really the root of what our project continues to transcend.
With that, our project pays homage to families and communities impacted by the war in Vietnam. It addresses the grief and intergenerational, multi-generational trauma that Tran talked about in order to foster healing. And this is not a one-off community engagement project. This is an ongoing community engagement project. I just wanted to make sure we all are aware of that for our project. Is a countervailing corrective to the prevalent lack of diversity, inclusion, and equity in placemaking public art in Boston.
So here are some design that we're inspired by, especially to incorporating design as a connection to the diaspora, not only in Boston, but beyond. Seen here are traditional Vietnamese and Southeast Asian hut that we want to embed into this project. So for our community members, especially in public spaces where there's really none for our community members to gather, but to really build that sense of home away from home and a sense of migration in this space. And here are also prototypic elements that I've been working on to really consider what this design that's going to incorporate community feedback and engagement the first image you see are of kind of the traditional hut that I built. The second one is a nod to the boat refugee experience that many of our community members have experienced. And the third one is the kintsugi, which is this idea of a Japanese concept of literally mending what is broken. And so that is going to be incorporated into the final kind of design, continuing that literally addresses healing grief and literally building something that is collective as a community.
So scary over here. So we have 3 potential sites, 1 public and 2 private, okay?
We also want to emphasize that a lot of the sites we've been working with people that are part of that are in community and building relationship and the kind of developments of that. Because our project is very rooted in collaboration. Here are our existing partner and also potential partners. The top of which is Boston Little Saigon is that our primary partner, and also the emphasis on our targeted community, our own community of audiences. That's going to be the heart of the project. Other organizations are locally based.
So Sasaki will, I mean, there are a lot of phases to our project. Sasaki, we hope to partner up with Sasaki to go through stage 1 and stage 2. We have planned out all the stages very much. So now we welcome everyone's comments and questions. Thank you so much.
Oh.
Thank you for presenting such a timely and important project. I think many of us felt quite emotional as you shared your vision. My question for you is about Townfield Park as a site. It's a public park, yes. And we see that the city of Boston is a pending partner or collaborator. Could you also talk about the private sites and sort of how who the different partners and stakeholders are for the various sites and how they'll be involved in the process?
Yeah, so the top one, the Townfield Park, we chose that site because that is the heart of the community. That's also the site where right now, temporarily, a lot of our community members gather for events, kind of temporary kind of rituals and ceremonies. And so we chose that site. In regards to your question, because the Townfield Park is actually currently in development right now. So we're in talk with some of the planners that are involved. We understand there's a lot of permitting that's a part of that, so that we're in continual talks and meetings that are happening. And so there'll be kind of our partners. We also recognize there are also organizations that are in the proximity of the area. We all kind of have relationship and are in. The other 2 sites is the Viet Aid CDC, which is another big organization that we both have worked in different capacity with. They're, also one of our partners right now, and we're also in talks because they have a community kind of garden site, and that was one of the kind of the plan that in case kind of the public kind of with permitting issues, they're going to be kind of the secondary. And then also our third is the Pho Hoa restaurant, which is the restaurant that I work with them kind of over the years for different projects, and they're very readily available. They're like, if you want a site, we're here. As if you need us. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And I really appreciate that you guys are coming to this idea as members of the community. But I was curious to hear a little bit more about the engagement kind of questions and what sort of decision-making power you're planning to give to the community members that you're going to be engaging in the design process. Just in relation to the prototypes that you've had, you kind of coming with a formed idea to get reactions, or want to hear a little bit more about how you want to approach that.
So as the lead artist in the project, but by no means are the designs intact or simply my own. I work very much in collaboration. So we also plan to have, steering committee, advisory committee, and each phase of the project. We also plan to host multilingual events so that the community members are there, they're fed well, and that they can give us feedback, whether on site, in focus groups, or in continuous kind of conversation digitally or also in person too. So we're very much open to that idea. In my other projects, same way. There's no there are things that I understand to also controversial and a little tricky in community, and I want to be very mindful of that. And this, after all, is really a project rooted in collaboration and also towards healing.
I believe everyone is an artist in his or her or their own right. Okay, so I mean, there's a lot of events in the Vietnamese American community of Dorchester and Boston and beyond. And every event, the community comes together and start building these decorations, like big, almost like 5, 6 foot tall homes, like huts like this. And it's a community effort in, building these big kind of like entities that exist in our events. Now, we're the young generation. We're not going to know everything about what a hut, looks like or how it exists, anything like that. So that's why most of the money, some of the money will go towards like a pilgrimage to Vietnam to talk to our elders, to talk to the people there, to get materials and all that. And also to the community members. There are elders in our community, that will, I want to do this. I want to be a part of this project. I want to actually put together the haze and the straws of the hut together with you. So it will be a community effort to make the project, to build the project, and to sustain the project.
Hello. Okay. So thank you for sharing with us. I think this is a great project in terms of it being an exercise in spatial memory, right? Recognizing the importance of space as a function of community and what it means for a community to see themselves in that space. I think it's pertinent both on a micro level in terms of like a specific community, in this case, the Vietnamese community, but also on a more macro level in the sense that there are multiple different kinds of, cultural, racial, ethnic groups that live in proximity to each other and can also benefit from what you guys are proposing. And so I want to hear a little bit more about the long-term engagement component. You said that this is a way to facilitate what will be ongoing engagement beyond the lifetime of this particular project. And so I was curious if you could talk a little bit more about what you envision that being and how this piece, this spatial piece, could contribute to that.
I could talk about it from the social, behavioral, and emotional lenses as a mental health clinician working with the Vietnamese American community for a very long time now. Healing doesn't just only exist beyond within our four walls of our home, right? It has to exist also in the community and the way that we engage with our community. And so therefore, this is one way for the community to come together to recognize what happened and how it's still the goals of this war is still very much existing in our lives, in our children's lives today. So that together as a multi-generational community, we can then heal and bond together. It's very inclusive because, I mean, the Vietnam War is a very political war, and the Vietnamese American community, we can say there are different political sides. However, this will bring everyone together to do just that. And it will transcend time as well as space. This is physically located in the Vietnamese American community in Dorchester, Fields Corner. However, it's like a butterfly effect. It's gonna go and rip beyond just that one space in that park or that garden. But also it's just gonna be in perpetuity for generations to come. So everyone, as you know, the old, the young, the now, the later, we can all go to this spot and think about what happened and how we can actually build a legacy of healing and intergenerational wealth from that versus talking about just the traumas.
In terms of also your question around like engagement, already there's so many existing events that we've both been a part of, as well as our families, that happen annually every year. You may know April 30th is a big time of the year to commemorate the loss of the country, the loss of Vietnam. And so our communities come together, they march, and even the Dorchester Day Parade that's coming up. My family, like people still dress up in the military, different garbs to express themselves. There's different cultural events that happen throughout the year. So that is where we plan to incorporate into the site, the literal site, and to continue to build with our neighbors and also other communities too that also experience diaspora.
Thank you so much. I'll invite up the Early Educator Space 2.0 team.
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me? My name is Kim Lucas. I'm a professor of practice at the School of Public Policy at Northeastern University.
Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor Kane. I'm a senior policy advisor over at the Boston Housing.
And this is our project, Early Educator Space 2.0. We'll get into that. I guess I want to kick off by asking you all, when I say the words childcare, think of the first 3 things that come to mind. Childcare, today, now, go. Think about it. Wow. Amazing. Yes. Housing, I don't know necessarily one of those. But this project comes at the intersection and housing. No, I've done it. So I'm going to walk you through one of the big issues I not think about when it's child. Since 2017, in the past 6 years, Boston has experienced a net loss of 15% of its child care program. What that translates into is 39% of young children ages 0 to 5 are unable to access high quality licensed child care. They're just not, since in the past 6 years alone. We're not even talking about 2027, talking about the primary driver of this gap is really largely due to rapid attrition, family child care. These are folks, largely women, women of color, immigrant women, who do child care work, and they're child care entrepreneurs. They tend to be neighborhood level support for, yes, young children and their growth and development, but also families who work, but also for their neighbor, their eyes on the street. They often pull a whole neighborhood together and function as kind of a community hub. In 2017, our team learned that there were only, curiously, 30 family child care providers operating out of Boston Housing Authority development. Now, if you want to think about this, there are over 25,000 people who live in BHA, and there are 63 developments. 30 seems like a very low number. And so we wanted to figure out why. One of the things we learned is that space is a crucial factor for making sure that family child grow, thrive, sustain. Space provides high quality teaching and learning environments, but it also provides a place of well-being, because this is a live workspace. In 2018, with the support of Open IDEO and Gary Community Investment, we launched Early Education. And that was a 2-year project that sought to understand why there weren't more family child care. We yielded policy revelations, and we started figuring out a bunch of design solutions. We even started prototyping with some Harvard Kennedy students, graduate design students, and then the pandemic.
This problem didn't go away when the pandemic hit where we are now. So we really think that it's important to revisit this work, but also expand it in a different way. And really at the crux of this is a desire to really create community spaces where low income thrive and continue to be a part of the neighborhood. So what we're proposing is really this space-based intervention that's at this intersection of childcare ability. And what we bring to the table as a housing authority is this is our built environment as opportunities. How do we create spaces that can serve as sources of an expanded space? So go to the next slide. So what we're hoping to do for this is kind of, let's see, this is 3 full day, 30 seconds straight. So we're gonna create space with the most our child care providers. We really want to think about those people, former child care providers who are no longer operating, but probably have about why this is. We want to talk with current child care providers and then we want to capture perspective to understand how do we really create BHA. We're gonna work with kids too, and my time is up. So hopefully questions allow me to go into further detail.
So this question might allow you to go into a little more detail because it's about prototypes, which I saw was next on your list. So as some of the people in this room may know, prototyping sort of expensive and you can overrun costs. So I'm curious how you might think about that and scale it maybe for the better, it's cheaper, maybe it's, you know, not. How does this project scale if budget doesn't match what you're expecting?
Two ways we're thinking about it. So first, where we want to start is places where we're already thinking about doing projects in spaces. So we're like maximizing impact. Like we already have a plan in place. There is budget allocated. But how can we go a step beyond? And then at the Housing Authority, we are also undertaking this process of redeveloping some of our existing public housing. So again, that is another opportunity area where we can start to kind of build into our pipeline. If projects are being redeveloped, how are we thinking not just about like the buildings themselves, but the green spaces and open spaces around those sites?
I'll just add, I think number one, in terms of pulling off a singular prototype, we have resources from North for this tool if we have to. But really the goal is to do one singular proof. Can this be done? How does it get done? What are the pieces that we need to put in place to do it well? Can we scale it beyond one housing development? And we have colleagues out in Lowell, Massachusetts, about really similar things. How do we support them and put that out in, right? And so it's a lot of learning in this that I think is really the big, like, oh, that's what we get.
Awesome, thank you.
I don't have a question. As a parent, I just want to say how important this is. And there's such an opportunity right now because public housing is getting densified, right, as mixed income housing. And so thank you for sharing this with us and allowing us to be a part of this work tonight.
Thank you so much for the work you've already done. The world definitely needs it. Children definitely need it. Sort of two questions. How do you envision including BHA residents and FCC participants in the design process? And then I think it was on one of your last slides, maybe getting to this. How do you ensure that the proposal is sustainable and has longevity? And what are the frameworks potentially in place for that?
So I'll kind of start with this. That is a huge component and a reason why we thought it's a great partnership to have the Housing Authority involved as a property manager and landlord. That we have to think about, if we create these spaces, how do we ensure that we are kind of incorporating them into our capital planning processes so that they are being kind of regularly updated over time. And I think that is a place where there's lots to learn, because I think we do well kind of updating our housing kind of as we need to, but to think a bit beyond the housing to like our green and open spaces, that's kind of like new territory for us to explore. But I think that's something we're really invested in because of the potential impact for both family-based childcare providers, but also young people, also the surrounding neighborhood, like the ripple effects are pretty significant.
I think the engagement is really about that. We learned a lot, right? We really learned how to start with folks in BHA developments, but then learned really quickly, like, oh, these are not the only people who will benefit from having a green or an open. Really, the initial prototype that our Harvard students helped us design, helped our family childcare folks design, was a mobile kit that folks could bring around throughout the offices of any. And they came through that by learning and understanding, like, okay, what are the policy issues that come about with unit redevelopment? What are the issues that come about when You have 3 different healthcare providers in the space, and can we all share, right? And we realized really quickly, like, oh wow, developing this stuff is really good for families who are in also living in development, and doing this stuff also brings in property. Wow, families live here. Wow, people do, right? And so it really eases tension that sometimes comes around.
Thank you so much. I'll welcome up a memorial garden to remember the unhoused community.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Calso. I'm the Director of Development and Communications with On the Rise, and I'm joined by my colleague, Maria Rodriguez, who is our Safe Haven Program Manager. And we are here to talk about our Memorial Garden. So On the Rise is a place and community for women, trans, and non-binary people who are moving through homelessness. They often first come to us, often in crisis, having dealt with multiple overlapping challenges, having unsuccessfully navigated other support systems, looking for safety, an environment where they can first and foremost meet their tangible needs. But ultimately what they find is a community and a support system through our staff and our other participants. So if and when they reach housing, if that's their goal, they would continue to be a part of the On the Rise community through our Keep the Keys program, which is housing stabilization and retention service. And what's really important to On the Rise is that we are dedicated to forming long-lasting, enduring relationships with the participants of our program. That's actually the transformational force behind our work. And it's the safe and trusting relationships they have with our staff and each other that really leads to positive outcomes in their lives. So the Memorial Garden that we're here to talk about today impacts everyone in our community. That's 400 plus people that we're serving every year. And it's an important space because it's physically located on our beautiful Victorian home that we own that actually has a current existing memorial that we have outgrown. And we have some really serious design challenges that we need to address so that we can continue to honor and remember the people in our community who have been lost. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So these are some photos of the existing space. I think it's really important to see because it's a significant part of our yard. It's actually right in the front of the home. It is somewhat visible from the street. We're right off of a really busy street in Cambridge, close to Central Square. And so even though we are a private space for our participants, it is nestled in a neighborhood that anyone could walk by. And it's not only a place to remember our community, but an important place where people spend their day. If they're taking a break from inside the house, they might be sitting, talking with each other, lunch, taking a break, just enjoying the outdoors when the weather is nice. And every year we have a ceremony to commemorate people in our community who have been lost. And the challenge, you can see the photo from last year's ceremony, we've lost since the pandemic over 25 people that we don't have a place for in our memorial garden. And we want to have a place not only for them, but for future participants, because it is so important to them that they know that there's a community that will remember them, that cares for them, and will remember them even after passing. So I'm going to hand it over to Maria to talk a little bit more about what that looks like on the day-to-day.
Little short. So yesterday, actually, we had our Memorial Garden ceremony, which was beautiful. What the day looks like is really, we get a priest or someone to talk and have an opening statement and a closing statement. We had a singer who sang a spiritual song in English and one in Spanish. We had somebody read a poem, and at the end, we had advocates talk about the participants who did pass away. And so this became like a full circle moment yesterday specifically because one of the participants who did pass away, their daughter is now one of our participants from about 2 months ago. And so when we did tell her, hey, we're actually gonna do this ceremony, her eyes watered. She was like, wow, you guys really do this? Like, we didn't even have a ceremony for my mother. And she was really eager to talk and say a few words for her mother. The day came and I think she was shocked because we set it up, as you can see, like that, but we had pictures of the participants who passed away and it was beautiful. And so when she saw the picture, she got a little shocked and she's like, oh, I can't talk anymore. I didn't expect to see her. but she trusted me enough. So she wrote out her speech and she trusted me enough to just read it out for her, which to me was like, wow, this is like really important to you and really special that you're allowing me to do this for you and make sure that I portray whatever it is that you want me to portray for you. So she did stand up with me. We stood together and I read her piece and it was just so beautiful. And needless to say, our community needs it. They really appreciate it. And we're here long lasting. This is what we do and we want to continue to do it.
We can go to questions, but this is just a proposed timeline. So our goal is to have the new memorial installed for next year's ceremony in May. This is an annual event. We really want to honor it appropriately.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for sharing the story of how it really impacts individuals. Really appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about the design piece. What was the community participation involved in the one that exists today, and then what you're thinking sort of in contrast or in addition to that? And then would also love to hear specifically about how you might be thinking of compensation for people's time to participate.
Absolutely. So this existing structure was generously donated by a private donor and was contracted out through a company. And to my understanding, actually didn't have any involvement of our community. So first and foremost, we want to do it differently. There are elements of the memorial that we would like to keep and honor the memory. You can see the little stones in there actually have inscriptions on them of the participant's name and a symbol that is associated with them. Sometimes a symbol they pre-selected and sometimes selected by other members of the community who knew them well or staff who knew them really well. And then you can also see there's a pathway here and along the path are bricks with people's names. And that's when we ran out of space, when we ran out of sidewalk. We don't want to put any bricks where someone would walk over it. Our community feels like that would be disrespectful. And so we need to have a separation between the walking space and the space that is used for sort of recreational purposes and the parts of the garden that are in tribute to people. So in terms of the collaboration with our participants, you know, one of the strengths of our program is that we're very relational and we're in conversation with many people. We have 25 to 30 people in and out of the house every day. Over the course of the year, again, it's 400 people. And so we do a lot of day-to-day conversation. We have monthly meetings. I think there'd be an opportunity to do something more intentional in terms of focus groups, talking to participants about what would you like to see? What are your ideas? We don't have any preset ideas for this. So we have an opportunity to think really creatively about it and be really receptive to feedback from our community. In terms of compensation, you know, when we do things like focus groups, we often do compensate our participants for their time and for their feedback. So that's already a practice that we have and could easily be in this, especially with funding. So that helps to make it an opportunity not just to give your voice, but respect and honor the time that you're putting.
So this is really moving. And I'm really glad that you guys are pitching this. I have a somewhat tactical question, which is in order to do like, you know, reveal for next May and with the timing of the design grants, you're kind of looking for how might you like adapt to that?
Well, if we had to push off a year, we had to push off a year, but we would like to have the plan in place by next year. We have not been able, so we were not able to do the ceremony 2020, 2021, so 2022, these are the pictures we brought back. This year we did something similar and folks are already asking, how will I be remembered? Where will, so there, we feel the urgency, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because our community is asking. So I think that when the event comes around next May, we need that we
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Hi, folks. This is going really, really well, and I'm so happy for all of you. When you're presenting, it's coming through really clearly, but during Q&A, I think you're turning a little bit, so it's the folks online can't hear it as much. So right here when you're doing your Q&A part.
Hey everyone, Armani White here with Reclaim Roxbury and the Here we go here. The Survival Guide to Roxbury. So again, my name is Armani White, and I'm the executive director of Reclaim Roxbury. You're probably wondering why a survival guide, right? Survival guide is something that for us is going to help people to learn how to stay and survive in Roxbury. Raise your hand if you know about displacement and gentrification in Roxbury. Okay. Everyone's hands are raised. So you all know why this is the moment to together and think about how to survive. And if you're wondering, like, who am I and why am I doing this? So I'm the executive director of Reclaim Roxbury, which is a community organization I helped found in 2015 to organize residents to decide how we want to see public land developed. And our vision is to see Roxbury have a community that's built by community members, designed by community members, where we can afford to live and stay. And we got together because we heard that, well, a friend on the city council, that the city was planning to develop over 40 acres of public land in Roxbury. And we were worried about the BRA, now BPDA, and their commitment to community development process. And so we got together and we said, okay, we need to figure out a way to push the city. And we won, and we'll get into that in a bit. But why we're doing a survival guide now is, as I mentioned, we're facing a housing crisis, we're facing displacement, and people need to know how to survive and stay in Roxbury. Rents are on the rise, and frankly, what's being produced right now around housing doesn't match the need of what people in Roxbury need, and across the city, frankly, for most incomes, if you're not wealthy. And so we were able to advocate on 40 acres of public land, all the ones you see marked, and we were able to win through advocacy, direct action, forums, and a number of different ways that were all nonviolent to advocate for change in our community. And when we fight, we win. This is a phrase we often say in our community when it comes to advocacy. And what does that look like for us? So we won a commitment for 66% of the 66% of the affordable housing to be, or rather 66% of the housing on the public land to be affordable. And a third of that very low, a third of that middle. The city normally only builds 13%, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, building here. And we were able to get a commitment for Black and Brown-led development, eco-friendly development, good jobs, and a host of other community-led standards. And over 1,000 units of affordable housing are coming to Roxbury. So raise your hand if you know about this. 2 people know about it. Okay, so this is part of the issue. We need more people to know about this story and this history, and to know how we got these standards built into the city's own RFPs for public land. We got the city requiring developers to do development without displacement plans, and to make sure that the building, like both the design and what the affordability matches what community members want. These are some of the developments that are coming now due to our advocacy, most of them led by Black and Brown development teams with high levels of affordability. Some go over the 66% requirement. And this is a major change in how things are done for development in Roxbury. And so why a survival guide, right? Back to why we're here. We need to put out this story. We need to share this message. We are a small nonprofit on staff, and this funding would allow us to put this out into a physical form and update an old survival guide, which I see a number of you all have gave it to you in the beginning, and create a way for this to be online as well, where we can share these stories. And we want community members to know about this work and to learn about how they can do it in other communities too, not just in Roxbury, because a lot of communities are facing a threat of a displacement. And this is just an example, right? Before our advocacy, this is what the city was planning to, what developers are planning to build in response to the city's RFP on public land. 700 units of market rate housing. What we have now is a totally different project. It's more than 66% affordable, a very diverse development team, the commitment to eco-friendly development and open space. So it's stories important to tell in the midst of an administration that's also committed to using public land for public good, things that advocates helped to push to make possible here in Boston. And we are actually helping people apply to the affordable housing units we won. So it's really closing the loop on advocacy. But we want people to know how to do it on their own without us sitting down. I would also have technical assistance essentially for how to apply to affordable housing and how to organize. And we're opening our first office space. So this book would also exist in our office space. And we're very close with the local public library and plan to have it there and to do a whole process of getting people to take advantage of it, and also the input on the design of it and tap into people's personal stories and the stories of advocates that we've worked with throughout the community. So this is a survival guide, and this is just an example of one funny map we have in our old one, and we need to really update this. So this is why we're here tonight. Hope you all will support the survival guide to living and staying in Roxbury.
Thanks, Armani. I love the idea of a survival guide. Just that phrase is very provocative. You were saying it's like, why do we need one? And I think most of the folks you are engaging will know why they need one. So I'm curious, how was this current guide received? What have you learned from how that was received that might go into, I guess, this next one? It sounds to me like this is really an exercise in designing a communications piece. And obviously you're going to try and reach as many people as you can, but curious.
Yeah, so with the last one that we developed, we were able to get it out into the community through word of mouth. Instagram wasn't as big when we did that in 2016, I believe. Also, a lot of the information in the booklet is changed. Like the things that we were complaining about before have changed because of our advocacy. So we want to change that. The feedback, a lot of the language in there is very sometimes like slangish. As you might see in the map that was up there, like how to build a big ass building. So I'm not sure, like some people like that, but then for some people who are more professional, they were like, this isn't productive. So we want to be a little bit more serious with this one, but also still have it be productive and to be provocative and speak to the members that live in the community and how we talk. But yeah, we're really excited to get it out there and to use social media, use our office space.
Congratulations on all the wins you've already had for your organizing. I'm curious, like you're saying, sort of the last iteration, it sounds like lots of changes have come to fruition as a result of that. Can you speak a little bit more to your decision to create a guide targeted at a community audience rather than pursuing additional changes to like the city RFP and policy?
Yeah. So we're actually hoping to do a little bit of both. There are still public parts, like parcels of land that are publicly owned in Roxbury. The mayor's identified. And we want to prepare people to advocate, for what they'd like to see in those plots. So the goal is to speak to people about what we've done, and then to inspire people to also take advantage of what's coming and to know about it. We didn't mention in these slides that there's a new like 4 acres of Roxbury owned by the Boston Water Sewer that going through a process, getting residents to come out, share their thoughts on it. This is something that will be used in real time, both by people in Roxbury, but also folks in other neighborhoods. I hope that answers.
Thank you for this. Again, I agree with Penn's comments about the importance of designing communications to be able to tell a story, share information. You talked about how you would hope that this can inspire other groups and other communities to do the same, because obviously Roxbury is not the only one going through similar issues. I'm wondering if you could speak on, or if there's an idea or a vision of designing, I guess, a community organizing or mobilization process around development where, let's say, Roxbury has one, Dorchester has one, East Boston has one, Chinatown has one, and all of a sudden these 4 or 5 or however many survival guides become something more. I don't know if it's maybe a question, maybe a comment, but just something that thought to mind is like, the guide is one thing, but is there something else that we could be designing towards that maybe can't be named just yet, but is out there?
Yeah, what I didn't mention, important to mention, that so each neighborhood in the city of Boston has, all know there's a master plan that guides how development happens. Roxbury has a master plan that was last updated in 2004. So the hope with this is to also initiate a new master planning process for Roxbury. And we are part of a coalition right to the city of Boston that is actually a coalition of organizations similar to Reclaim Roxbury that do this in Dorchester, Mattapan, East Boston, Alston Brighton, Chinatown, and we're all fighting for our own master plans, and we hope to work towards like a citywide vision. I know we're a part of this new change with the city around how development happens, launching the BPDA. We're working towards that. So this is going to work towards that vision and goal that we're basically already a part of, but you may not know that if you're not deep into the advocacy world, but I think that's part of what we're trying to do with this tool. is let people know is like actually there's folks fighting in your neighborhood, and we want you to be involved.
Thank you.
Next will be the Improving Open Space in Chinatown team.
Good evening. Thanks, everyone. Actually, it's really humble to hear all the amazing presentation before my talk. And also, it's amazing to also know how many great and interesting projects has been up around this whole area. And I really hope that this event will bring more people together, because there's so many ideas. So, my name is Lawrence Chen. I'm on the board of Interest, and together with the Chinatown Hope Initiative, this is the presentation and for design grant. Sorry about that. So I'm going to quickly go through the history. So I'm just going to run through the slides of this whole area that you're right now. This of this from the 1850s to the 30s. With the rail yard expanding, but also there's an overhead orange line with you pulling up. Remember, overhead running right through here. And also the garment industry used to be right around here. The Chinatown community has been around since the 1850s, so the change is always fresh. So in the 70s, the urban renewal basically destroyed quite a bit, plus the turnpike expansion basically knocked out half of the land area of Canada, displacing quite a lot of people who used it. In the 80s, different challenges. The combat zone, which is a misnomer for the red light district, is still along Washington Street, always creating a lot of trouble for Chinatown community, but also the institutional expansion right in the middle of medical school, and the medical center, and Tufts University itself. But also bear in mind, there used to be a lot of Chinese population in the South End. So this in fact cut the Chinatown community of this meeting. But what's interesting between 1980 and 2010 is the whole trend of people moving back, especially closer to the transportation center. So suddenly, where Chinatown used to be undesirable, people are coming back. So you see a lot of market rates and condo project being built. You can see around here, along Union Street, but also in the English. So one thing that we didn't expect is the real estate pressure on all the row houses, which is really where a lot of the new immigrants used to pack themselves into it. That's the genesis of the land trust, is to basically purchase these row houses. We control the land and sell the units of our low-income family, therefore control the affordability forever. But once we control the land, we realize that land shouldn't be controlled. We have to expand our goal around this area. That's why we get into open space. Nothing else. I'm going to quickly go through. So Chinatown is one of the densest, but also by the highway. The Heat Island. This is just a map that we show in terms of Heat Island effect, and also due to sea level rise and flooding issues around the community. And one thing we want to do is really expand the open space. And what we're looking for this first phase, focus on two areas. The Phillips Square, which is right there, which is the technical urban intervention by the city 2 years ago, but we want to improve on. The second in Reggie Wong Park, which across this many units, it's a concrete jungle. Heavy community, especially with youth. Sorry. Go back one. Can you go back? So these are the efforts. But besides that, we also want to look at the small planted boxes along the street, but also to advocate for creating more open space in land that is not owned by the city, but is private. We tend to do a lot of advocacy and kind of a pressure tactic on the private developer, private owner, turn land into so thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for taking us through the urban history of this area and highlighting the complexity of urban challenges and the work that you and community are trying to do. I was curious how you and your team envision connecting to other initiatives going on in this area, learning from those, potentially partnering with, and how this proposal connects to the community in order to further bolster and achieve these goals.
So the Chinatown Hope is actually a combination of 7 different neighborhoods. And also the land trust is grounded by people who are also very active in the community. I personally have been active in the Chinatown community for 2 years. And one thing I have to tell you is changes in the community through my involvement over the years. We used to not talk to one another. But now, like, all these groups are gathering together because we know that combining our forces, we have a much larger voice in front of the city and the city. So these pictures are basically just a snapshot of all the events. Everyone in the Chinatown community organized.
I'd love to hear more about the some of the ideas that people have for those 2 focus areas.
Yeah. So the Reggie Wong Park, so it's Reggie Wong is named after a long time ago. But that lot is really interesting. Leftover contract. But every year, you know, for China, amazing national volleyball competition. But there's no bath, no shelter, no trees, surrounded by highway ramp. Right? So we actually tried for 3 years to get the Mass DOT to give us a 15-year lease use for that land. And they're going to do some remediation. There's some sort of chemical toxic up there. So what we would like to do is working and get the grant onto is to come up with some idea how to improve the experience of using that space, whether it's some shelter or some landscape treatment to get soften that. The Village Square, in some way, is a gateway to Japan. Right now, it's okay, but it could be much better. It could be much more creative, inventive, to the point that you guys can take your lunch break out there.
I had a question thank you for sharing all of the work that your organization is doing in the neighborhood. Just wanted to hear a little more specifically about the desire to participate in the design grants cohort, how you see that fitting into other initiatives you're working on.
So these 2 are actually just a nibble. We have a much larger vision, right? Ranging from, the DOT just got a grant to do the so-called connected community, which is study stacking over the turnpike, connecting back to the south. So we can think big, right? In terms of just like one piece here, one piece here. Also 26 exposed how technical coding. How do you connect? I'm off script. I always said, how do you connect this part of China, which is restaurant, business center, to the residential community across unions, all the way to the south? How do you create this kind of pedestrian environment that is enjoyable, shade, right, with greenery to make that connection? Right now, it's pretty brutal, right? There's nothing that encourage you to make that walk. But if you think about the market, the only Chinese market right now is Dallas.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And invite up Movement Training and Cultural Center.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hello, my name is Rodrigo, and I work with the INES, and we've dreamt of creating a world-class immigrant-led research and training institute that would seek to find the models, the frameworks, and the strategy necessary to birth new social movements. Last month, part of our dream came true when we were able to buy an 8-year-old commercial building in the city of Riviera. I'm from East Boston, and Riviera is a neighboring city that also has a very large immigrant community that we're always in relationship with. And I'm very excited that the leadership can stay rooted in the community with this new infrastructure. A little bit about me. I started working in social change as an undocumented youth over 13 years ago because I didn't have legal status. I came here with my parents and my brother when I was 4 years old from Peru, and all I wanted to do was be able to go to college and support my family. But I faced a hurdle of not being able to do so. Yet, I was actually part of a large immigrant rights movement or DREAM movement that accomplished that and gave over 700,000 undocumented youth the ability to go to work and go to school through an arduous 10-year process and struggle that has been defined as the largest immigration reform in the last 30 years. The INE Institute was born from the learnings of that movement, and there's two things that we do. One is that we work very hard to obtain inclusivity and equity. We believe that if we want equity and we want inclusion in society, you actually need to develop and train social movement leaders, and that's what we've been doing for the last 10 years, training over 11,000 social change leaders and activists around the country and around the world. The second thing that we focus on is on the destruction of Mother Earth. We need an ecological revolution to take place on Earth, yes or no? Where we feel like we're in right relationship with each other, with Mother Earth and each other, or as others call the environment. We believe that we can't do that without learning from the indigenous wisdom from across the world. They are the original protectors of Mother Earth that are still alive and are still showing us a way towards an ecological society. And that's what INE is about. And in envisioning our dream training center, one problem that we arrived to is that most buildings, the aesthetics are all homogenized. Everything looks the same, and no wonder we don't change the world because everything feels the same. And if places were designed differently, then we can create different things, not just to have places that are different looking, but are rooted in history. And our indigenous elders have told us that the way that things are designed, the way that things are put in place, the types of colors and the materials that we use, the precision of the walls, the types of windows, whether the halls are narrow or wide, everything informs a relationship, a narrative that influences the types of projects and relationships that emerge. Right now, we invite the Sasaki Foundation to help us in exploring and co-creating a building that allows us to engage in two radical interventions. The first thing that we want to do is design a building that creates an aesthetic that is completely revolutionary, that is inspired by the aesthetics that are emerging in Bolivia. Here you can see the neo-Andean Andean buildings that are created and designed by Freddie Mamani that don't just feel like a regular building, but hold the world views, the collective wisdom of indigenous Bolivians expressed through contemporary aesthetics. And we at INE want to bring that to our neighborhoods because we're part of those communities as well. We want a radical new aesthetic that is informed by social movements, that is informed by indigenous cultures and by ancestors. We want to allow us to connect differently with Mother Earth because the light and shadow of the sun through our Earth's movement in a year has to relate with how our buildings' facades are designed and the shadow that it casts. Just like the Andean communities did in Machu Picchu, which is a sacred animal to them with the condor, or how the wind, because the building is in a windy place, we would love to tell stories through creating sounds and chimes. And we would love your help in translating this from a design perspective. And the second thing that we want to do is that we want to create a living memorial rooted in inclusive history. We're deeply inspired by the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, Alabama. And visiting the museum was one of the most powerful experiences that I had because it tells the truth of one of the most powerful stories from history of enslavement to mass incarceration, told through a living memorial that accompanies a country's painful truth. And we want a building to become an illuminating experience that stewards you, whether you're a community member, whether you're a training participant, an artist, and allows you and others to immerse in a new and creative conversations on social change. Because to engage in social change, to address the problems in the world, to be a firefighter going into the problems of the world, you actually have to have stewardship and creativity. And in short, we ask for the support of the Sasaki Foundation to birth a radical new aesthetic that also feels like a living memorial and takes our work to new depths, where in doing so, we hope to inspire other institutes and community organizations to not think so limitedly about design, but actually that design has to be central to how we actually change the world. Thank you.
So that presentation actually answered the question that I had written down when I read through your proposal. So I'm gonna go on the fly here a little bit, but I think this is very inspiring. I'm curious, this Sasaki is a design firm. Curious if you could elaborate a little more on like what specifically you're looking for. Like, is it design and architectural? Is it there's sorry, I'm not asking the question. Like what specifically with this grant do you been accomplishing?
Yes. So outside of the 15,000, I think what we're really looking for is for the technical assistants to be able to actually have the blueprint, at least in the first phase, of what we actually want to create. I think being a community organization that's existed for the last 10 years, we've been able to accomplish something that hasn't been able to be done for us in our history until the last 1 month ago. And if I told you 3 months ago whether this would have been possible or not, I would have said no. So I think for us, we understand that things comes in time and you have to do things in phases. So I think the first phase where we really want support from is actually to be able to have a blueprint design of what we can actually make. And we can, raise the money to make it, whether it's we can use the first floor as actually the main meeting room, whether it's the second floors, which is actually the training center and the space where everybody gathers, whether it's actually more private rooms where people have a moment of focus, or outside a moment to have ceremony. All those things are kind of like the ways that we're looking for support, essentially in guiding us to what our vision already is in a container process of how it should be designed it and implemented in a physical space.
Yeah, no, this is really inspirational. And I think maybe to follow up on that question, just curious for the process, maybe you can talk a little bit more about what you have in mind about who's going to be engaged in this visioning process and how are they going to be involved in different steps?
Yes, thank you for that question. So this project is being stewarded by us, INE, and also Neighbors United for Better East Boston, as well as essentially our council of Indigenous elders that are going to help us guide, particularly from the Indigenous Andes and Amazon, that are going to help us guide us through this process. Some of them are graphic designers. We've actually helped them produce films, books, documentaries, conferences, and they're also ceramic artists. They make jewelry. They have a lot of thinking and understanding of different design languages that are particularly from the Andean and Amazonian region. And we're hoping to have their support as well as the support through Nube, which is a large civic engagement organization in East Boston, to also have the input of our large immigrant community as well. I also actually want to open up this question to Vani, who has been a 30-year Revere resident and also part of our team as well.
So this is where Revere meets Eastie. This is really a wonderful project. In my opinion, the way how we're incorporating community is, tonight I've been thinking about the questions that who is our community? For us, it's Rodrigo and Vani, but it's Eastie and Revere, it's Chelsea, it's communities of color that have been displaced by gentrification and other ways. And having this building is a way to engage with community on a local level. The landscape is bleak. What we're bringing is vibrancy. What we're bringing is a remembrance of who our people are, what our people have built. We are in the city of Revere. We're leaving our headquarters because we're being displaced, right? We planned on buying this building last year and commenced a short capital campaign and got a building. So we know we can do this. what we need to remind our people in Revere and in Chelsea and in East Boston is that our people have been doing this for a long time. And the building itself is located across from an Amazon building, a Comfort Inn, and right next door is the high school where youth from our neighborhood walk. And this particular neighborhood is the most diverse in the neighborhood, has to cross a big rotary to get to the high school. They'll pass by our building, which is currently looking like a standard bleak building. What we're inviting Sasaki to join us is to show joy, show celebration, show memory, show culture that our people, our young folks, who are parents and grandparents who have left their country, have seen and known. And that's one way in which we're inviting community into this space. But also it's an invitation to our local nonprofits. Revere does not have a strong local nonprofit. Building has not been possible. Our political landscape has not changed. Why? Because we need a place of our own. INE is here in Revere to bring place to not just the people of Revere, right? But the organizers, those who have run campaigns, the artists, the cultural organizers. That's how we're gonna reach our community, is we're opening INE, which is for reciprocity. We're sharing this, our heart, back to the community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Invite up the Roxbury DIF team. Hello everyone.
Thank you so much. Really excited about the opportunity to talk about the Roxbury DIF project, centering community voice through the lens of arts and culture. The team includes Bridget Wallace and myself, Anita Morrison-Martra. We've been working for a few years actually as a part of the Place Leadership Network initially. We're both urban planners and have a strong relationship with the community. I am first generation born in the United States and both my parents are from different islands and they met in Roxbury. Bridget has lived in Roxbury for the majority of her life and owns property and a business there. There are a number of champions that help this work: Napoleon Jones Henderson, Counselor Anderson, the Boston Foundation, HRNA, and the Arts of Business. So wanted to start with the inspiration. It's often not the case that we start with feelings and emotions when talking about economic development, but we really wanted to not only give a nod to Mel King, which we both had a relationship with, but the understanding that the project is built on love. We both have a genuine love for the community and really want to see it not only for the people who are coming, but the people who are already there. So again, this started with the Place Leadership Network, which was a great opportunity. It was in a cohort that was funded by the Boston Foundation, which was really focused on place leaders and really pushing beyond the typical work of place leadership and stewardship neighborhoods. It included folks like Main Streets districts, cultural districts, et cetera. So let's talk a little bit about the place. So Roxbury is amazing, includes historical sites like Malcolm X's childhood home, amazing complex parks, beautiful art, and a thriving small business community. But Roxbury has also seen the brunt of a history of redlining, and all the data supports the fact that even though it happened so long ago, the impacts continue. And we see that a lot with the percentage of renters, of course, household income, et cetera. We often like to talk a lot about the comparison between the South End and Roxbury and intentional displacement, again, going back to the statistics around redlining. So let's talk a little bit about the tool. District increment financing is really an opportunity to put the hands of power back into the community and place. It's a value tool that is utilized usually by developers. And what happens is new developments, they pay taxes and those taxes go into a general fund. The city has the responsibility to determine what happens with that fund. We would like for us to collect taxes within a boundaried area and for those taxes to go back into that area. This is approved by the state. It happens in other places. And one thing that's very unique is that it's never happened in the city of Boston. There are other local examples that include downtown Brockton and Assembly Row in Somerville. The downtown Brockton example is really interesting because it's more of a neighborhood or a community, whereas Assembly Row wasn't a community initially, but one has cropped up. And again, that's millions of dollars over a 30-year period that's reinvested in the community in an intentional way. So a part of our work, neither Bridget or I focus on economic development in our work. And so we've been very fortunate to partner with HRNA. They're an organization that helps with real estate, economic development, and public policy. We did an extensive initial market analysis that really looked at a particular boundary. We used the HUD boundary and also the arts and cultural boundary that was within the neighborhood, but we really want an opportunity to expand that out a bit so we can have more reach and impact. And these are just some of the general takeaways. So the unique thing about this project is that we really want to focus on utilizing the small percentage and the decision-making process around the arts and cultural lens. So the funds are used specifically for capital improvement, but we want to make sure that that's, again, providing additional support and facilities for arts and culture. And we're looking at transportation, housing, and arts and cultural space. The other unique part is that the community has the opportunity to self-determine. So there'll be a committee that's formed similar to the Community Preservation Act. There'll be partner organizations and a group of advisors. We've had a lot of headway so far. We've had an initial hearing before City Council, and there's an opportunity for the city to explore this. We're at a really critical moment where folks are thinking beyond the usual boundaries of the way we do this work. And so what we're really asking is to think about how we are elevating the community relationships. Even though this is not a tax or a burden on the community, we really want folks to have a decision in what happens with some of these funds, in partnership, of course, with the city. Additionally, we want to document the process. We really feel like this is an important tool that can be utilized in other communities that have gone through strategic disinvestment. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. This was such a powerful and inspiring presentation. And I think with the diff, it's really important for us to understand the city budgeting process and how it is not progressive at all, and that tax revenues do not necessarily prioritize Roxbury, right? And places that have seen historic disinvestment. So the diff tool is so important. And it's a policy instrument, and your work to advocate for that at the city council and just all the sort of coalition building that you've done is really admirable. I think the question I have is about community engagement. So how will you use this design grant year? What outputs do you have in mind, and how will they support community engagement?
Definitely. So one of the key things is that we really want support around the research of the structure of the committee. We want to know if maybe we should have a few folks that are suggested or recommended by the mayor, and then voting in community members or people who have been working at this of all of the kind of challenges around Roxbury. Another thing is an elevated community outreach process that includes like online access. Maybe there's some type of tech involved, but we really want to think outside the box, because even though this is not a tax or a burden on folks, we want folks to be actively engaged in the process. We really feel like Roxbury has already going through an amount of change, and with the Nubian Ascends project, as well as what is proposed for Parcel 3, arts is really like a connector, and we really feel like the community can benefit from that.
So one quick question, which is, so I love that you're using an existing tool that has not been used in this way in a lot. So I think that's really innovative. I'm curious, what are the hurdles in the way that you hope that the design grant will help you overcome?
So the initial hurdle is of course getting it across the finish line. We've had an initial city council hearing. We believe we have support at the city level. This needs to be voted in by city council. So that's one hurdle. Another is that this will be a large amount of funds. We want to make sure that it's highly visible and transparent process. And so the committee, as well as who holds and manages those funds, are really important. And we've been tossing around the idea of entities like Ujima, something that's trusted, but we really want the support of Sasaki to help us figure that piece out.
Thanks, Anita. Yeah, in a way, I feel like you have a similar desire to pump up the visibility of this and tell the story. And yeah, I'm just curious that in your proposal, you had talked about a video. I'm just curious if that's still a part of your plan.
Yes. So the video component is where the bulk of the funds will be utilized, and we really want to document the process of community voice. We think not only will it be a way to reinforce the importance of the project happening in Roxbury, but similar to the reparations project in Evanston, it can be utilized as a tool for other communities to also think about doing.
Thank you so much, Anita.
Thank you.
Oh, welcome up our final team, building food resilience through urban container gardening.
Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? My name is Magdalena, and I am the founder and executive director of a very small grassroots organization called the Harbor Keepers. And they will introduce themselves.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elsa Flores, and I'm a Harbor Keepers community organizer.
Hi, everyone. My name is Prima. I am working with Magdalena and Harbor. Thank you.
Much. So I don't typically do these presentations. The name of our project is Building Food Resilience Through Urban Container Gardening from the Comfort of Home in East Boston. So really quickly, our mission is to build coastal community resilience and foster environmental in East Boston and other communities of the Boston Harbor. And Hyde Penn, I just realized you were there. So East Boston, many folks already spoke about East Boston. It's a very unique neighborhood, but it is designated as an environmental majority immigrant, mostly Spanish speakers from Central and South America. We have a lot of people from North Africa, the Maghreb region, and other cultures. 2/3 of the land is taken over by the airport, right? So with nothing we could do with 2/3 of the land. And it's really geographically isolated neighborhood of Boston. A lot of environmental impacts. We have, airplane car emissions, airplane pollution. Gentrification is happening in East Boston. Other folks mentioned it. A lot of overdevelopment of luxury housing causing displacement. We have hazards from other industries like oil storage facilities, and obviously language and socioeconomic barriers. It's really a beautiful neighborhood, really, the history, historically, the place, the Ellis Island of Boston, where people would come. It was a shipbuilding industry. And so you had Ukrainians, you had Eastern Europeans, then you had Italian Americans and so forth, Central Americans, South Americans, North Africans. So it's really unique, really diverse. The project that we chose really has to do a lot with food resilience. We do coastal resilience, but a lot of that has to do with, food resilience. We have one supermarket in East Boston, and we are really subject to a lot of climate change impacts and flooding. What happens, actually, that supermarket parking lot gets flooded with the nor'easters now. So it's a big problem. So food resilience is really important. You can see here through another project that we did, sort of the isolation with access to healthy. It's a very complex urban environment. Other folks have talked about that with other neighborhoods. We have the quintessential triple deckers, which are originally were built for one family, right? And they were sort of subdivided over the decades. And they don't have a lot of space. And now you have many families living, these triple deckers. Go quickly. Isolated neighborhood pockets. And we chose this topic because, we're an immigrant community. We don't really have a lot of urban agricultural community gardens or access to them. We really want to build sustainable urban agriculture from the ground up and to really foster that with the families living in East Boston. And really utilizing the spaces that people have as opposed to forcing them to go to the gardens, which a lot of times they have kids, they don't know the language. Let's start from the home. That's where we build the well-being. So really providing the technical design, you all would be instrumental to really helping the families understand what does it really mean to grow something. I know it sounds really simple, but it's really a life skill that could really multiply. I'll go quick. Yeah. And so, obviously the problem of food waste, lack of food resilience. And really the goal is very simple. I feel like my presentation is like maybe too simple for a lot of the ones here. Really helping people in densely populated urban communities that might not have access to urban gardens to learn how to grow their own fresh food with what they have. And that's it. Yeah, and I think that's it. So I think that's good.
Thank you for that presentation. Obviously, food scarcity is a big issue that a lot of communities are facing in this city, in this country. So it's great to see one of our projects, potential projects, touch on this. So I have two questions. I'll ask the first one first. Have you looked into, so obviously this is about people being able to grow food in their, have you looked into like the existing building stock and whether it can, whether there's like the space or access to, light and so on and so forth to be able to do that? Is it sustainable? Are we talking about like, what percentage of home, like, I'm just curious, like, as far as like the existing building stock and homes where people are living, is there enough possibility there for this project to be sustainable? That's the first question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the beauty of sort of us leading this project is that we are an already established organization with a whole engagement platform. We've done this on many other projects. So we have the families. We've already run it by many families. They're interested. They're waiting. There's a diversity of housing. Most of them are triple deckers, but there's also families living in homes, like maybe, 2-family homes, large building apartments like Shore Plaza East. Probably most of you don't know. It's this huge, public housing with 999 units on the waterfront, right? And some of them have terraces. Some people have windowsills. Some people have little decks. Some people may have a space inside. So I think it would be great to pilot this project to really get at that question. But what we do know is that there are a lot of triple deckers where people might have a little terrace or a little windowsill not being utilized for there's multiple barriers, but we can actually help foster an understanding and help people grow. And obviously there's nothing like, I don't know how many of you have grown a vegetable in a container garden, but it's the most empowering thing to get a tomato that you grew. And that's a life skill and the children will see the parents do this. It'll be, in the comfort of the home and really a lot of learning from this project. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you for that. And I guess the second question is, you mentioned this being a project around food resilience. I also see this as being a project that can also touch on community resilience. You talked about the one supermarket being prone to flooding. And so is there a way for this project to achieve a level of scale where there's a surplus of food that's available so that in case of emergency, neighbors can help out neighbors by giving them access to whatever they have because there is a surplus?
Absolutely. And I think that's going to happen even before there's a major catastrophe because we have Elsa and Vilma, these are families that are living in East Boston and Eagle Hill. And I think what it would do even before the impacts from climate change is people will get so excited about growing something, feeling comfortable about. And not having to deal with, okay, I have to go and water at the garden and maybe I have to take care of my children at the same time and maybe I don't know the language and maybe I don't feel comfortable in this neighborhood. We can really multiply. That's why we ask for sort of like that middle ground because we want to actually record and have the families take notes. And this, the structure is, I would oversee the project. Elsa and Vilma would be the project leaders. And they would, we would look at 10 families and those 10 families or mothers or fathers or whoever, guardians would actually be in the care of another 3 to 4 families. The way we structured it is it just automatically builds community and it just multiplies by the way that we structured the program. we would be providing stipends. So all that money, most of it's going to go through stipends, materials, and just growing food, honestly. So it has the potential to really be larger scale, absolutely.
Yeah, I really love this vision. And I think I was moved by it even just reading the proposal, and you sell it really well. I'm curious if you could talk more about the container garden piece, and I think we might have run out of time, but I'd love to see how that fits in.
I think that's great. And I thank you for that question, because I really had to think deeply about the design. The help that we would get with your technical expertise is to really help us think through this. Providing the expertise on, okay, what space might be feasible within the home. And again, we'll have like other people who are comfortable speaking, with other people. But really just assessing sort of some site location design assessment. Okay, which location might be good? You have to look at conditions. Is it getting enough sun? Is there airflow? What container fits in here? What kind of container should we be using? What kind of soil? What can we grow? In some terraces, we might only be growing herbs. In other terrace, it might be larger. You can grow, tomatoes and lettuce. So I think this pilot project is really going to be a big learning opportunity for Sasaki Foundation, the Harbor Keepers, and the whole community. So I think that I would love to answer that question, hopefully, for the project.
Thank you. It's a real no-brainer how obviously important this project is, and feasible it is, and scalable it is. And my question was also about sort of what design outputs you envision for this year, whether it's graphic instruction, or whether it's the container grow kit, or whether it's the design or educational workshop. And if you could share a little bit more about that. I think besides just feeding people the sort of cultural food, whether it's herbs or peppers, and also how people could share recipes. There's just so much.
There is.
But first, let's talk about the design output.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't, that's in the project proposal, and I obviously don't have the time, but one of the things that I wrote in this proposal is to really celebrate all of these cultural diverse families. They all have different culinary traditions. And so this project has the potential to really help, give them hope about being able to incorporate their everyday by growing. If the North Africans use a lot of cilantro, maybe Puerto Ricans, culantro, right? And then, or maybe, peppers, or maybe tomatoes are really big, Italian American culture. So the design is really site assessment within a home, something that we don't really think of. We think about urban gardens outside. We're changing that up a little bit. We're like, what can we do with what we have in our homes, in the comfort of it? You can garden in your pajamas if you have to, right? So I think site assessment within the home, design expertise with helping us we're going to have workshops, and that's in the proposal, a bunch of workshops. And we're also going to do a trip to a Massachusetts rural farm to bring people out of East Boston and look at growing in their farms and get their feedback. So I think, and then assessing what type of containers, maybe you need artificial lighting, maybe you don't. So I'm really excited, to get funding, whether it's through you or somebody to really do this project.
Have a round of applause for all the teams. Thank you so much for coming.